Good day, grade 9s. How are you guys doing today? Welcome to our physical science lesson. This is Marshall A.C. Candiado, right? Today we're going to be looking at nonmetals. We're going to be looking at nonmetals. In the previous lesson, which was effectively a combined lesson 8 and 9, we looked at metals. And basically, we talked about the properties of metals, we talked about alloys, then we looked at the reactions of those metals with acids, the reactions of the metals with oxygen, with water, different reactions. We saw different reactions. We're going to do the same thing now for nonmetals, right? And for nonmetals, it's also very simple. We're going to look at what nonmetals are, look at their properties, and then in lesson 11, we're going to look at the reactions of nonmetals. Okay, so our objectives for today, okay, I hope you guys are listening. Try as much as you can to always pay attention. Do one thing at a time. Do one thing at a time. So if you're watching this video, okay, I'm going to take this time to say this. If you're watching this video, always learn to do one thing at a time. Okay, so focus on the video, focus on the notes, and you'll be able to understand everything I'm going to say. So the objectives for this lesson. By the end of this lesson, we'll be able to state the properties of nonmetals and even to describe them. We'll be able to also differentiate metals from nonmetals. Okay, just from the properties, you may be able to say, okay, from the physical properties and also then maybe from the chemical properties. Explain the uses of nonmetals. So by the end of the lesson, we should be able to do these three outlined objectives. Okay, so take a minute to compose yourself. If you had something else playing, just stop it. Just focus on the lesson. Take a minute or so to compose yourself. Right, guys, welcome back. So now we say that we're talking about non-metallic substances. We're talking about nonmetals, and on the screen right now I have carbon, iodine, and sulfur. These are three common examples of nonmetals. I hope you've seen sulfur, or you've seen carbon, or something that is constituent of carbon. That is, carbon is one of its constituents. And the simplest thing that I would think of is wood, right? If we think of wood, that is a nonmetal. That is a nonmetal. If we think of sulfur, the powder, that is also a nonmetal. So when we talk of nonmetals, we find that they are generally substances that don't have luster. Do you know what luster is? Luster is basically the ability or that shine. Right, there is metallic luster, and usually when you see substances or objects like ornaments, jewelry, gold, silver, those are lustrous, they shine, okay, and there's a certain shine that they have to them that is distinct for metals, and nonmetals usually don't have that shine. If you think of a tree, it doesn't have that shine. Okay, so we also have here several examples of nonmetals. If you look at your periodic table, you can try and identify where these elements are found in the periodic table. So another thing to note is that nonmetals, as compared to metals, they are much less in relation to the periodic table. On the periodic table, you'll find that about 80% of the elements that are there are metals, whereas metals are only just around 20%. Okay, but this don't worry about those percentages, because still those nonmetals which are there are extremely important. They're extremely important because if you think of oxygen, think of oxygen and just ask yourself, how important do you think oxygen and then the carbon and the oxygen combined to give you carbon dioxide are? And if we were to ask, what would you rather have, oxygen or gold? What would you take? Nandai? Elizo, what would you take if you were given a choice? Okay, what we were going to give you either a bucket full of gold or a bucket full of oxygen, and you can only choose one, and that's what you're going to live with. You would have to go with the oxygen, right? You'd have to go with a lifetime supply of oxygen, because oxygen is essential to your survival, whereas gold, yeah, it will give you the shine, it will give you the bling, but you would still just die if you don't have the oxygen. Right. There's just something there that says allotropes. We're not going to talk about allotropes in detail, but allotropes, my kids, are basically, when you look at carbon has the ability to exist in that physical state, right? It can exist in different forms in the same physical state. You can have carbon in the form of diamond. You can have carbon in the form of graphite. The diamonds, I'm sure you know. The graphite is the one that is mixed with clay and used to make the pencils. What's it called? The pencil lead. Graphite is mixed with clay, and you use it. That's what you find in your pencils, right? That's a common example of a non-metal. Right, so if we are looking at the properties of nonmetals, we'll find that they are brittle, and if they are hit with a solid or a hammer, they will turn into a powder, right? They will turn into a powder. So they can be solid, right? They can be solid, and then if you hit them with a hammer, you can then actually crash them into a powder. I hope you can see the difference here, that here these are just simulations, yes, animations. Carbon solid, iodine solid, sulfur, that's almost sulfur if it was like a clump. But then if you hit it with a hammer, it's going to, because it's brittle, it will crush it, and it will turn into a powder. Okay, so if we're also looking at this now, we'll then just go straight into the properties of nonmetals. And we'll find that nonmetals are usually found as gases or solid. Nonmetals are usually found as gases or solid, with the exception of one non-metallic element, which is found as a liquid, right? So you can pause the video just for maybe a minute and try and look around, and maybe you can even Google and try to check which non-metal exists in the liquid state. Oxygen is a gas, hydrogen is a gas, carbon is a solid, sulfur is also solid, but there is only one element, non-metallic element, which exists as a liquid. So you can pause the video and you can just try and look for the answer. Okay, so I hope you guys, let's see what, okay, it's bromine. Bromine is the only non-metal. Which exists as a liquid at room temperature and pressure. Okay, so you will find that oxygen is a gas, hydrogen is a gas, and carbon is solid, sulfur is a solid, and then can change into a powder, but it's still solid because powder is still solid. There's no difference. Bromine is the only one that exists as a liquid. So if we continue with this video, we'll see different properties of nonmetals. We'll find that nonmetals are poor conductors of heat. They are poor conductors of electricity. They are non-sonorous, right? So we were always going to have, like I said, under the objectives of the lesson, to have a comparison of the properties of metals and those of nonmetals. So we can see also here on your PDF that I've given you several properties of those nonmetals. So you read them. Don't just look at the material. Don't just look at the PDF, please. Don't just look at the PDF. Look at the PDF, read it, try and understand what it's saying. Try and understand what it's saying. The stuff is not difficult. You just want to be watching YouTube videos of people jumping off the roof and people being eaten by sharks. Don't do that. You also have to focus on your schoolwork. Look at the properties of what? Those are the properties of nonmetals. Those are the properties of nonmetals. And these are the differences between nonmetals and metals. So you find that when we say that they are lustrous, they can be polished and then they become shiny. Ductile, those two words, ductile and malleable. Ductile and malleable. Those ones, new words for you guys. New words for you guys. I mentioned them before when we were in grade 8 to say when we say something is ductile with metallic substances, it means that you can pull it into wires, right? If you stretch it, if you pull it out, it stretches and it becomes a wire. That's why you have those electric wires, electric cables. But you can't do that with wood. You can't take your bench of wood or a table and then you say, I'm going to stretch it out, I'm going to make wires of wood. No, you can't do that. Malleable can be hammered into sheets. I'm sure, let's see if there was a part here where they had, did I have it? I'm trying to look for something that is malleable. Those are just allotropes, carbon. Diamond is made of carbon. Graphite is also made of carbon. That's what we call allotropes. Both of these, diamond and graphite, they are both made of carbon. So you're saying what the diamond and the graphite, they're both made of carbon, and that's why they're called allotropes. Back to the properties. So we're saying malleable. If you take a piece of metal can be hammered. If you hit it with a hammer, we saw that with the non-metals, if you hit them with a hammer, they'll crack. You crush them, and they're brittle, and they'll break into small pieces and even into powder. But then when you're hammering a metal, it just flattens out. It flattens out, and you can form sheets. That's why you have zinc sheets, right? That you use for roofs. Uses of nonmetals. That is, you can just have a read on those. Neon signs, the bright lights, right? The bright lights. I don't know if we have bright lights in Oshakati and Ongwediva, but hopefully you do. Usually neon signs. If you're going to have in the evening and you want people to see the name of your company or the name of whatever store or shop that you're having, then you're going to have neon lights in there. Right? They're very bright, and they even have different colors, so they give that feel, that nice feel in the evening. Helium, filling balloons. Nitrogen, we talked about nitrogen in detail in grade 8, used to make fertilizers, explosives, so I say it's mentioned in grade 8. And they have several other uses. You guys will tell me of those several other uses in our WhatsApp lesson, right? You guys are talking about Zoom, but yeah, not now. Right now, let's just take time. Let's always take time. Right now, it's a 30 minutes, 14, 15-minute video. It's not too much time out of your life. Just watch the video, read the notes. When you come into the lesson, participate with confidence. You can only participate with confidence if you have watched and if you have listened. Thank you guys. I hope that we have managed to cover the objectives for this lesson. Are we now able to explain the properties of nonmetals? Right? To say what are the properties of nonmetals? They are there in the document. I've just given you a brief highlight of what they are. Differentiate metals from nonmetals. Basically from the properties. That's how you differentiate metals from nonmetals. The properties. That's how you tell, okay, so this is a metal. This is a nonmetal from its properties. Explain the uses of nonmetals. You are now able to do all of that and even more. We even told you more than what had been planned. So I would like to thank you guys for taking your time to watch this video. As always, this is your teacher, Marshall A.C. Candiado. Thank you very much.